You've written about MIT's connection to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
He was well connected at MIT and at Harvard. What lessons do you draw about human nature, about universities, about all of this from this saga?
Let me say this. I believe that universities, if somebody was to, for example, donate to a university and donates on the requirement that the building be named after them,
Mhm.
if the university is taking donations and the person is funding a building and wants the building named after him, the building should be named after him, or them.
Mhm.
Harvard is facing this now with the Sackler building, because the Sacklers have become now a persona non grata because of their role in producing the opioids that caused the huge, scandalous opioid addiction. There are people who want to remove the name the Sackler from the Sackler Art Museum at Harvard. Larry Bacow, the president of Harvard, to his credit, has refused to do that. If it reminds people that the money was earned through selling opioids, that's good. That's good that people understand that that's where the Sacklers got their money. They should be reminded. In my undergraduate alma mater, Princeton, there's a movement to remove the name Woodrow Wilson, because Wilson was president of Princeton before he became governor of New Jersey, before he became president of the United States. How he got to be governor of New Jersey was he was so insufferable that the trustees of Princeton got him the nomination to run for governor of New Jersey. They had said, we got to get this guy out of here. Not because he was anti-Black and anti-Semitic, because the trustees were as well, but because he just was insufferable. He drove the faculty crazy, and they got him out. So Princeton was thinking of changing the name. I wrote a letter to President Eisgruber at Princeton saying, this is part of the university's history. You don't want to rewrite history falsely. Woodrow Wilson was the president of this institution. He was one of your predecessors. He never answered me either. I think these people, they know they have no answer. The reason I didn't get a response from President Eisgruber is the same as the reason I didn't get a response from the headmaster of Milton Academy. They understand that what they're doing is violative of the fundamental precepts of academic institutions.
Yeah.
They're ashamed. They feel they have no choice because they feel that they would be criticized for racism, homophobia, blah, 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 blah.
Criticized by how many people?
Well, they feel that they would be criticized by students and parents and donors. I disagree with that. I actually think there are more people out there that agree with me than agree with them.
Yeah, by a large margin.
By a large margin in what I call the real world, which is the world outside the campus. But academics are afraid they'd be criticized. They're incredibly thin-skinned. When I say academics, I mean academic administrators. They're very thin-skinned, politically correct, holier than thou. As I said, I would fire 95% of them, and I would be more careful in who I elected to lead these institutions. So I said Pauline Gay is probably going to be a disaster at Harvard.
So it takes guts, it takes courage to be in the administration when the task of protecting the freedom of speech is there. And also, which in part requires you to admit and to uphold the mistakes you have done in the past.
Correct.
Not to hide them.
Correct.
And that to you, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein for Harvard and for MIT is a very recent mistake.
Well, there's a debate whether it's a mistake. They took money from him.
Yes.
Okay. Is it a mistake to take money from bad people? Do you have to do a morals test of a potential donor? I don't think so.
It's complicated because
if there are no conditions attached to it, I think it's emotionally complicated. I don't think that it is rationally complicated. It's emotionally complicated. It's particularly complicated if they want naming rights.
Yes.
The Jeffrey Epstein Biological Laboratory, that would be a problem for most universities. I don't think that naming rights have to be given to somebody that you don't think is worthy of having their name. I think the university has the right to say no. We'll take your money, but we will not name the building after you. I think they have a right to do that.
There's some degree in which you whitewash the name, though. If you not with naming rights, but if
you take the money,
if you take the money, it allows the person in public discourse to say that they're collaborating, they're working together with Harvard and with MIT.
Well, I have a problem with universities making morals tests of donors, because not every donor is as bad as Epstein, but some of the donors made their money in industry by being rapacious, by paying low wages, by exploiting people.
You can make the case that accepting money from the Department of Defense, from DARPA, from the United States organizations that contributed to waging war and killing hundreds of thousands of civilians over the past few decades.
Correct.
Folks like the tenured professor Noam Chomsky will make the case that that is far more evil than accepting money from Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
Still, Jeffrey Epstein is a known pedophile.
Yes. So that's why I say I would not give him naming rights. I think the university has the autonomy to not give naming rights, but I think that giving morals tests to donors is a Pandora's box.
What do you think about the aftermath of the Jeffrey Epstein saga? It feels like I'm not familiar with Harvard's response, but MIT's response seemed to fire a few scapegoats, and it didn't seem like a genuine response to the evils that human beings are capable of, sort of like rising to the surface, the description in a fully transparent way of all the interactions that happened with Jeffrey Epstein and what that means. What that means about the role of money in universities, what that means about just human beings in power.
Money is essential to run a university. Yeah. One of the reasons it's essential is because the university is artificially requires huge amounts of money, and that's partly because of the administrative army that they support. And they would be less dependent on the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world if they didn't have so it's sort of all part of the same circle. So
but there's a tension here. You're saying we shouldn't be putting a morals test on money, but actually, if you expand the amount of money needed to run the university, you're going to make less and less, more and more unethical decisions.
Correct.
In terms of accepting money.
And as I said, I am flexible enough to say that I don't think I would name a building after somebody who is truly evil. I think the university has the right to limit the naming rights for a donor. If I was an absolutist, I would not even say that, but I'm not an absolutist. I have my limits, and that's one of them. The Jeffrey Epstein Biological Laboratory, it's a little bit much.
It feels like there should be a requirement there should be moral requirements on who to accept money from. But the question is, the concern you have is about who gets to decide. And what's the alternative?
Correct. I think there is no alternative. I think that turning down a donation because you don't approve of the conduct of the donor is a Pandora's box.
But I'm just sickened by the fact that an evil human being was allowed to walk in the halls of a university I love. So what do we do with that?
Well, are you telling me that none of the students are evil? Are you telling me none of the faculty members are evil? Are you telling me none of the administrators are evil?
But that doesn't. Sure. So scapegoating, saying that Jeffrey Epstein is evil can help us forget, can aid us in forgetting that there is other evil in the world, and some of it might be roaming still the halls of MIT and Harvard.
Hey, listen, I won't tell you the name, but I represented somebody in the MIT administration a few years ago who was charged with sexual improprieties against students.
Yeah.
And as a lawyer, I represented that person. People say to me, "How could you represent?" Some of the people I represent are bad people. Say, "How can you represent them?" I said, "Well, if I was a cardiologist and this person had a heart attack on the street and I didn't deliver CPR, I would have my license taken away. I'm a lawyer. The only difference between my obligation and the doctor's obligation is the Constitution gives people the right to assistance of counsel. The Constitution says nothing about the assistance of cardiologists. I have a very high duty to represent unpopular people. Well, I think I apply the same test to the college donors. The university should not have a morals test. Whose money to take? I do draw a line about naming rights of buildings. And as I say, that's an inconsistency with my absolutism. But I just emotionally, I just can't deal with having, as I said, the Jeffrey Epstein Biological Laboratory.
Well, for me, emotionally, there's nothing that sickens me more in the university than the abuse of power.
Right. And there's an awful lot of people who abuse power at the university.
And especially when it comes to abuse power over students.
Correct.
So sexual harassment, so in the realm of sexual abuse of power and all kinds of other
Well, it is a crime to use one's power position in order to take sexual advantage of a student. It's a crime.
Yeah.
This is not a close question.
Yeah, but there's a legal crime and there's a deeply ethical crime, and there's an emotional response that I have. You are a good lawyer and perhaps a good man to want to defend some folks who are evil in this world. I don't think I have that emotional fortitude.
Well, then you shouldn't be a criminal defense lawyer or a cardiologist.
I think you're right. I'm still deeply sickened by Jeffrey Epstein and the faculty, the administration that still might be in these great American universities that are abusing their power in small ways and big ways. But that's human nature. You get a little bit of power and you're a bad man or a bad woman and you take advantage of it.
Yep.
We see that in the smallest of ways and in the biggest of ways. In institutions and regimes all across the world. Ah, boy, Harvey, it's a complicated situation.
Well, it's a complicated world, and it's complicated to be a human being, and this is nothing new.